So let's talk about the migrant hotel in Epping, which has been closed down by a High Court injunction. Well, they've ordered the council has successfully got this injunction, which has ordered the hotel to remove asylum seekers within the next couple of weeks. Tom, this follows off the back of major protests outside the hotel. Seems the council finally caved into the pressure. I mean, there was and the High Court has agreed with them, basically on some planning law, ironically.
Yeah, an unlikely twist.
An unlikely,
planning laws will come to the rescue.
The human rights laws versus the planning laws, which will win. But anyway, Tom, what's your take on the broader thing?
Well, I think this is essentially the first big crack in the whole policy, certainly where the hotels are concerned, but also the mess that is the asylum system. At this point, there's a lot of questions that remain about whether or not, this particular ruling is going to be quite firmly appealed by the hotel chains. It certainly has an interest in that, as well as the Home Office, who are obviously furious that their policy is being interfered with. They are in the process of trying to empty the hotels, but not necessarily making a great fist of it. There's also the question about whether or not this will have a kind of knock-on effect across the country. You're now seeing even Labour councils in places like Tamworth suggest that they're going to seek similar injunctions to close down the migrant hotels in their own midst. So whether or not it has a kind of automatic impact in and of itself remains to be seen, although it seems like it almost certainly will. But I think it's just that the momentum is so clearly in one direction now. The protests have forced the issue. People in various different communities who have been bearing the brunt of the mess that is our asylum system are just refusing to put up with it, essentially. I mean, and also it's important to say this isn't just about the hotels as well. If you think about some of the protests that have been happening in Waterlooville, they were addressed by Suella Braverman recently. That relates to a block of flats which was going to be turned over to house asylum applicants. So I think fundamentally the public have noticed now what a mess the asylum system is in. They've recognised that it's basically become, in no small part, a kind of funnel for illegal migration. And that in that context, we don't know who people are when they haven't been vetted, when it's not clear who is fleeing, charges in other countries, who might pose a threat to the public and who might not. People are not willing to take that gamble, particularly in a place like Epping, where you had, in pretty short space of time, 2 quite serious cases of residents of the hotel being brought up on charges of sexual offences and otherwise. So it does feel like this is the first crack in the whole policy, and that the government is going to be forced to respond, and not just by moving the problem around. I think at least that would be woefully insufficient to the level of public anger and interest there is now in this issue.
Yeah, Ross, that does seem to have been the response from the government. Just displacement, move people to different places, move people from hotels to HMOs, talk about the deals we're doing with France, but not really actually getting to the core issue of people crossing the border illegally.
No, exactly. As Tom said, I mean, this is a small victory under planning law for local people, and saying the migrants are going to be removed from the hotel, but they're not going to be removed to their home countries. They're not going to be sent back to France. They're going to be sent to either another hotel, or if that proves politically difficult, they'll be sent to ordinary housing in ordinary streets, so they'll be closer to people who cause even more trouble. If you've got an empty house on your street in Epping, I would be a little bit worried at the moment that the migrants will be taken from the hotel and put on your street. So that's absolutely nothing to solve the underlying problem, which is that we've become pathetic at dealing with illegal migration, and we did have a plan. The previous government did have a plan, the Rwanda plan, which would have acted as a huge deterrent for people illegally coming to this country by basically banning them from applying for asylum in Britain. Keir Starmer did away with that in one of his first acts and saw it as a great victory for human rights. Well, the consequences of that are now there for all to see. The sort of rise in yet another rise in illegal migration, and he really has no answer to. I mean, he talks about tackling the smuggling gangs, people smuggling gangs, but he's sort of treating it as if every illegal migrant who comes to Britain is somehow some victim of some evil gang who's sort of coshed over the head and brought here without their consent. Well, of course, what's really happening is all the migrants are willing participants in this illegal trade. They know what they're doing. They're making the calculation that the risks is worth taking for the reward. And you can't deal with this just by tackling the gangs who are probably not going to be in Britain anyway. You've got to tackle the illegal migrants themselves. And if they don't have a story that stands up, or if they turn out to be connected with crime or terrorism, they should be swiftly removed from the country. And that's what we're not doing at the moment. And it's not going to happen as a result of this small victory.
And Ross, do you see the barrier to doing that as mainly the sort of human rights framework, the ECHR, things like that? Do you think that's one of the issues that has to be tackled?
Yes, I don't think it will be properly addressed until the ECHR is either reformed or we withdraw from it. Now, other countries, or just look around, other countries are very annoyed with the ECHR as well. They're trying to, I think, first of all, we should get together with the likes of Denmark, Netherlands, and so on, who are very angered by the way the ECHR is working on this front, and try and reform it. I mean, it seems to be the place to start. If we can't reform it, then we leave. I don't think leaving the ECHR would probably be my first move if I were in government. I would try to get together with the other countries first. If we do withdraw, there's a lot of opponents will try and make out you're declaring war on human rights, you're taking away everyone's human rights. But everybody I know wants to withdraw from the ECHR, wants instead a British Bill of Rights, which is, respects human rights, but does it in a sort of measured way and without all these sort of protocols which have been added on to the ECHR over the years. And the biggest problem with it is this thing called living instrument doctrine, which is a euphemism for judges making up the law as they go along. Until the 1970s, Britain had very, very few judgments. I didn't think it had a single judgment against it, actually, for first of 20 years of the existence of the ECHR. And then, as time went by, this living instrument doctrine sort of came into effect, and judges started interpreting it, those sort of, the convention in very different ways. And that's when we started to see cases of Britain being defeated in this court. And we've got to sort of get back to the sort of fundamentals of the European Convention as it was signed in 1950, because the authors of that would be absolutely horrified to see how it is being used nowadays to keep criminals and terrorists from being deported to their home countries. And it's an outrage, and it would have been recognized as an outrage by those who signed the ECHR 70 years ago.